All right, well, hey everybody, welcome to the Realine podcast where we talk about your faith, your family, and your money. I'm your host, CEO, and founder of Realine Bookkeeping, Brytton Rogers, and today we've got an awesome guest on the podcast, Micah Stephen, the lead minister at Odon Christian Church, also first cousin, right? So I have to obviously caveat that. Man, it's good to have you on for the first
Yeah,
time.
man. Yeah, no, it's good to be here. Thanks so much for the invite. I appreciate it.
Micah is a lead minister and I'm an accountant, and but it's pretty crazy because we both have lots of I'll call it lots of church world experience, growing up in the same church and growing up in the same family, and then after that, also Micah, just you've been in ministry now, what, almost 15 years?
More than that, I've
More
been,
than
if you
that,
include all
man.
of it, I've been over 20. Yeah,
Goodness, wow,
over 20 this year.
crazy. And how
Uh,
many of that's been in lead minister, like lead minister?
not 20, but
No, yeah, okay.
probably like 12 in lead
12.
ministry
Okay.
of 20. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Mike has been doing that, and I've been kind of on the operations side of the church, and in different ministries between internships and between working at actually working on staff at churches. With Realign with our business, being able to help churches from a bookkeeping standpoint and kind of a CFO standpoint. And so I feel like this was something that I wanted to do with you, Micah, is just kind of just talk about ministry a little bit and how it pertains to money and how it pertains to the finance side of the church. And oftentimes I feel like we talk about we get reports in church from either an elder or an executive minister or somebody who's kind of on the operation side. But I wanted to kind of get with you and just kind of hear from you about your experience with the financial side of the church and what role the lead minister plays in that, kind of in correlation with the elders. And so I'll just kind of open it up a little bit to you. Just what's been your experience in the? You don't have to get specific, obviously, to Odin stuff, but just overall experience with budgeting and getting in getting into the finance side.
Yeah, so up until before I came to Odin, I didn't have any hardly any experience in it. What like my budget before I came here
Hmm.
was like whatever I made, I just paid it out of my pocket. You know, there was
Yeah.
almost majority of the things that I did, if I wanted it, I didn't have a budget line for it. It was just more like,
Yeah.
whatever you get, that's where you pay it, or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, not all completely, but yeah, for the most part. And then when I
Hmm.
came here, it was like, they're like, "Hey, here's your budget line. You get this much money. Here's a credit card or whatever it is, church card, and
Yeah.
you got a budget and you got this much you can spend per transaction." And I was just like, "Wow, this is cool, man. Like I can
Yeah.
do ministry." So yeah, I don't know if I have a whole lot of to say other than
Yeah.
our budget has not completely, but for the most part, really followed my lead as far as my
Mm.
vision for what I have for the church.
Mm.
And Odin has been very good. The leadership's been very good about empowering me to do the job that they've hired me to do. So,
Yeah.
and that
It's good.
is to cast vision for our church and that kind of stuff. And so, because of that, the money has kind of followed. And
Mm.
yeah, I don't know, man. It's definitely a God thing, but it's kind of worked out for
Yeah.
sure.
It's really interesting to me just how that, sometimes like I've been in situations where like when I worked in mega church world, the lead pastor didn't know hardly anything about finance. And it was all the executive guy and that team, the accounting team, like in a mega church world. And then you got the small church world where it's like, like you were saying, it's like, well, it's just on the minister or the pastor who, it's
That's
just
right.
like make sure the lights stay on, and the water stays on. Odin, do you guys do like an annual budget? Do you do like a quarterly
Mhm.
type thing? And is that typically obviously the elders are pretty involved with that and
Mhm. Yeah, so we do an annual budget every year. So we actually just wrapped up a couple months ago. What happens is we have different budget lines and different people kind of over that budget line. So I oversee three of our, I don't know how many budget lines we have, but I oversee three of them.
okay.
And each year I put in however much I think, hey, this is how much I'm kind of requesting,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, and then they kind of just our committee or elders or whoever, they
Yeah.
kind of say, oh, okay, that'd be cool. I think we should give them this much or whatever. And
Nice.
yeah, so that's kind of how we do it every year. And
Nice.
then we just try to stay in those parameters of whatever the budget. It's pretty loose, but it's tight, but it's loose. It's loose as far as
Mm-hmm.
inside those parameters, we can do whatever we feel is, like I said, leading towards our main goal.
Yeah.
And we have a treasurer, and he's super smart. Like I'm not even going to claim to like I he just does all that stuff, and I just say, hey, can you get me a
Yeah.
check for this? And he does it. So as
Yeah.
far as number game, I don't know.
So let's talk about kind of some of the responsibility level, right? Because you're overseeing a staff, you're overseeing, we'll call it a flock, right? They always call it a
Mm,
flock.
yeah.
A body of believers who are coming and then ultimately giving to Odin to go toward that vision. So, uh, talk a little bit about the responsibility level of that, of making sure people are paid and making sure that, the church is all aligned to. We talk about realignment here, right? And,
Mm.
how do you keep the church aligned to head toward that vision and also, encouraging them still to give and to follow your lead, essentially.
I think first and foremost is making sure that I personally am in alignment with what God wants, right? And
Mm,
so making sure that or making sure that I'm in step with God's will, and making sure
that's
that I'm
good.
in step with accomplishing what He wants to accomplish through us, through me, and then me being able to take that and uh, in some way be able to get people to sort of buy into what I'm selling, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I, so it's really funny. Everybody's pumped around here right now for the national championship football game this week
Oh yeah.
on
Oh
Monday,
gosh.
because I use in the championship, man,
Yeah. Who, who,
and I
who,
love,
who,
yeah,
really?
yeah, 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 absolutely.
Come on.
I mean, people are pumped, man. They're
I
already
bet.
like delaying schools on Tuesday, and all this stuff because Monday night's game.
Yeah.
We have a meeting this week for church. They've already moved it up like an hour or two so that everybody can get back for the game,
Yeah.
and it's just a big thing, right? But
Yeah.
one of the things I love about IU, and here's where I'm going with that, is
Yeah.
I really love Coach Sig, and
Mm-hmm.
and and Coach Sig has come in and basically taken one of the worst D1 football schools and turned
Yeah.
them into one of the best in literally 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how does somebody go into a program like that that's virtually dead
Yeah.
and take them back to one of the hottest teams that's talked about? Got a quarterback's a Heisman this year. He's projected to be like number one in the draft. How do you do that? And I realize there's money it's involved in that kind of stuff now.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think Coach Sig did what he did because he's got some. If you look, you can see leadership roles in that. And Coach Sig has shown, like, if
Mm-hmm.
I can get people around me to buy into what I'm selling here, if I can get
Yeah.
people pumped up about this, and people jump on board with it,
Yeah.
that's a dangerous thing. And so
Mm.
what
That's
I've
good.
tried to do at OCC is just try to get people around not what I want, but what I feel like God wants for us.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get people to buy into that, to be sold out, to be all in, so to speak, then
Yeah.
you're willing to go all out.
Yeah.
And that means
Mm.
and that
That's
means
good.
yeah, that just means I've been trying my best as a a leader on the staff, a leader in this church, how can I point people around me
Mm,
in the direction of where we look? I
yeah.
think I heard Bob Hicks this week in a sermon. He was preaching and he said, "The direction we look is the direction we'll take. Essentially, where we're looking is where we'll go."
Mm,
And so just trying to keep our focus on the direction in which I think God wants for our church, um,
yeah.
really just keeps everything realigned.
I mean, even me, like I'm down here going like, oh man, this guy is like, he's awesome. He's a former Saban guy.
Yeah.
He's like, he's rallying everybody. Even, even the coach before him, I can't remember his name.
Tom Allen.
Uh, whatever guy was like real excited. He was like real excited and real fiery.
Yeah.
I don't think he won a lot,
Yeah.
but but even him, I remember like just even IU getting, kind of was on the bandwagon, but this is a whole different level, right? Making the national championship.
Yeah.
But, people are going to follow the shepherd, right? Like people in your church, the
Yeah.
flock is going to follow the shepherd. And,
Yeah.
whoever's leading them toward a vision and toward a goal. I want to talk a little bit about, you and I both we have a mutual friend. Just want to talk a little bit about just how you've used CFR and to advance. I know that like the building you guys are in, I think you've used CFR
Mm,
for them,
mm.
and just how that has really like impacted you guys and really is like propelling you to growth and to the worship space that you're in right now. Like how do you get a church body to believe in big campaigns like that and into taking on that kind of a loan and just how do you get them to buy into we're gonna pay this thing off and we're gonna do this thing the right way. So talk a little bit about that because I know there's a lot of different lending companies out there who are trying to help churches expand and their vision. So yeah, talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that we this church as a whole, and even a little bit before I got here, was they had a lot of, and by the way, the church is way different now than when it was when I first got here. Completely
Mm,
different people. But this church really believed in this community and they could be effective and all that kind of stuff. And so they were willing to uh, sort of put their money where their mouth is. And
yeah.
I got partnered with CFR and Christian Financial Resources, and they actually, for one thing, they beat everybody else's interest rate. Like nobody else
Hmm.
was going to beat them. Like we checked with banks, we checked with different things. But one of the things I really like about CFR is that most of those guys have been in ministry before. And
Yeah.
so they've been on the ministry side of it as well as the financial side of it. And so they kind of
Mm,
understand. And two, the money that they loan to us, when we pay that back, that money goes right back into some other ministry somewhere else in the
gotcha.
United States. So it's
That's,
not
that's
like,
cool.
when we pay a bank back or something like
Yeah.
that, I don't know where the money's going, but they go to whatever.
Hmm.
Whereas with CFR, they're loaning money to us so that we can do ministry, so that we can pay that money back and help somebody else do ministry
Yeah.
somewhere else,
That's
which is
awesome.
really cool. So it's kind of so CFR jumped in. They loaned us the money that we needed to build this building. And we're already at the point now where we're probably going to be calling them not too long from now because we're growing out of the one we have.
Yeah.
And
Crazy.
that's a great thing to have. Yeah, but CFR, they've done multiple things for us. They've done like they did a campaign with us called leaving a legacy, so to
Mm,
speak, and it's all on like wills, like setting up your will and
yeah.
setting up leaving a legacy for your family, but also your church family. And
Mm,
so they offer services like that. And then, like I said, they're just really good dudes who understand. And I think there's a reason why they're so successful that,
mm,
they're, a multi-million dollar, I forget how many loans they've loaned out money wise, but it's insane.
yeah.
And yeah, we're at the point now where we're like, I think we owe like maybe 200,000. We're getting pretty close where we're getting ready
Yeah,
to pay this one off in not too long.
that's
So
awesome.
see if we
That's awesome,
so
man.
yeah, they're good deals.
I know a couple churches who I've worked with is now debt free, which is really really cool. You know, when I back I think 6 years ago they had $2 million in debt on their building, and then they rallied their members behind this idea of like, hey, yeah, we have this, but let's do everything that we can, to pay it back. And I think we just I all that to say, I don't think that we talk about that enough. Like I feel like there's members that are in our churches all across America who they have no idea about the you know the financial situation of their church. And I think it's just really good to be open and transparent about that.
For sure.
Which brings me to this question for you, and this is something we can go back and forth on. I don't know if we agree on this, but that's okay. Just want to talk about this phrase that I've heard a lot, and I heard a mega church pastor a couple weeks ago actually address it for the first time. And it's this quote that basically says, "The church is not a business." It carries a lot of weight around, and this specific megachurch pastor who I won't mention, he was coming from the standpoint of the church is not a business because of X, Y, and Z, because we're not run corporately, because we're not like our ministries are not super focused on P&L. We're focused on saving, drawing people to Jesus so that their lives can change. And I would just be curious, your thoughts on that phrase, like what immediately comes to mind, and is the church a business? I think like because from my vantage point being on the operational side, I could definitely make a case that the church is a business, right? Because there's, to your point earlier, there's millions of dollars flowing through it. There's P&Ls, there's balance sheets, there's, all the things from the financial and operational side that the members don't see per se. So just curious, like your thoughts on that, and how that from this podcast, people listening can actually just kind of like maybe be more a little bit more understanding of both sides of the equation. So
Well, yeah, I would just say it just depends on how you're talking about it. Like the church,
yeah.
I would say is a business because we're in the business of seeing the lost found and the found grow up.
Come
And
on.
so I think it is a business to the extent of we try to do whatever it takes to bring someone to Jesus short of sin, right?
Mm,
And so if that means
yeah.
and a lot of the things that we do, um, unfortunately, I say unfortunately, the world that we live in, it takes money, to do
Yeah.
things and to operate. And so,
Yeah.
we couldn't do what we do here at OCC without the financial side of it. In fact, you look in scripture and the same is true with Paul. I mean, you look at Paul in the New Testament, he couldn't operate the way that he did if he didn't have those who were
Mm,
giving and donating towards his ministry and the ministry
mm,
there at the church. And I think that's really really important. That's why Paul would say, a man's worthy of his hire, because we have
yeah.
jobs, we have things to do. So I would say the church is in a business.
Hmm.
Now I don't know to what extent I would say, I don't know that we operate so much as a business as far
Yeah.
as, the decisions that we make. But as far as we are in the business of bringing people to Christ and,
Mm,
I'll give you a quick example.
sure.
We One of the things that we've done that we've kind of has kind of been our forte in the 9 years I've been at Odin,
Yeah.
was we paid off medical debt for people in our community.
Mm,
And we paid off, I think both campaigns combined like $6.5 million of medical debt. Um,
mm,
and for
it's
people just
amazing.
in our community and the surrounding county. And I don't say that as, oh, look at us, but I say that in a way
Sure.
of the reason that we did that was not just so that we could say, hey, we spent, X amount of dollars to pay stuff off, but it
Hmm.
was that hopefully through this, we can share the love of Jesus and we
Yeah.
can see people who are lost be found or those who are found help them grow. And honestly, it
Mm,
was a process that brought our church together. And it was all because we raised funds and we
mm,
used that money in a way, a business, so to speak,
yeah.
on helping people out and being there for people that we some of them will never ever meet in our entire life. So
Yeah. It's crazy. And, I remember you saying that a couple years ago when you guys did that campaign and just,
yeah,
the freedom that people feel that will felt from that act of, generosity. And I think, from my vantage point, it's been hard for me, just being really honest, to say, well, why wouldn't you pay attention to that side of it? Because I'm in it, right? Like I'm not
mhm,
necessarily on the ministry side where I'm, having coffee with people and I'm going to see the sick and I'm going to, you know, conferences and like all of that. I'm more, on the other side of things where it's like I'm seeing behind the scenes and I'm seeing what people make and I'm seeing, all of that. And so I think that um, my encouragement, I guess, is on the member side, on the church members and attendee side, is really um, when you hear that phrase, when you hear that phrase, the church is a business, don't be necessarily offended by it, but rather understand that there is an operational side to the church, right? Like whether you like it
yeah,
or not, there still is. Like if you want your donation, if you want your tithe to go toward this specific thing, like somebody's still on the back end handling that. Or if you want your, offering to a mission in India, like somebody still has to do that. So I
yeah,
think your
yeah,
point is really really good when you say like the church is a business in the idea of we're in the business of saving lost people, right? And like that's ultimately what matters when we talk about business side of the church. I just feel like maybe it's just in my world, but it's a very can be like a very touchy subject because
oh,
it's like nope, we are not a business. I've heard that from numerous
yeah. I
people,
do.
and it's crazy.
I like I've heard like I've heard of like I know of some churches back home that like they say like one of the things they do is like they save up this money and they just throw all this money in a savings account somewhere, and it's just like they never it's not a business because they save all this money up and they just just like
Mm,
almost like, hey, if there's a zombie apocalypse that comes, we have this huge bank account to save us. But
yeah.
I think if a lot of the churches would be more
Mm,
active, so to speak, and involved and I guess missional minded,
yeah.
then they would be they'd be a little bit more financially see kind of the business side of things because they'd be that
Hmm.
money would be coming in and out, flowing in and out. It's really funny. Like, I don't know if you remember, there's a guy, I'm maybe you remember this guy. I think he passed away now, but there was this guy. He came up to me and he said, that worship was terrible. It's horrible and so loud and, all the things. And I look
Yeah.
back now and I kind of laugh. But here was the quote that he said to me. He said, "Do you know how much I give to the church?"
No.
Like, almost to say, like, do you
Crazy.
realize, like, do you
Oh,
realize, like, how much
man.
money I give? And if I pull out here, you won't
Yeah.
be able to do what you're doing. And I think probably the
Mm,
answer is that, if God wants to do something, he's going to do it.
yeah.
But I do think that we are called to
Yeah.
manage and realize that God owns all of it. We're just managing it.
Yeah. It's
Um,
good.
and and it's not wrong to focus on these things. I think money
Hmm.
can become a problem.
Yeah.
It's not. I guess maybe you've heard it said before, like, it's not wrong to have money. It's just
Yeah.
wrong for the money to have you.
You're a member of a church. Not that there can't be things that, that happen and we see them in the news and it's generally, you know, a mega church that, something happened with money or adultery, right? It's like either one of the two things.
Yeah.
But that doesn't
Yep.
happen like super often. So I would just say
Right.
like if you're going to a church and you're so consumed by the little things, right? And money's a big thing, but if you're consumed by it, if you're consumed by how the church is handling your tithe, uh, I think you have different issues, right? Like I think you have a deeper issue that needs to be addressed and resolved. And I would just say, so have trust in your leaders, right? And have trust that
Yeah.
God is going to multiply the money that you give. Man, I've seen so much fruit come from people who are intentional and churches that are intentional with the giving and the blessing that's been given. I think it is a very touchy subject, but that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I feel like it's kind of one of those hush hush things, right? Like we don't want to talk about it because it's touchy.
God places people in positions on purpose. If God has placed us here to do a job, not saying that you shouldn't question anyone or anything like that, but if God's
Right.
placed that person there, which I feel like, God brought me to Odin, which I had never even heard of before I
Yeah.
came here,
Yeah.
and somehow I ended up here. I just feel like part of my job is to make sure I'm following the will of what God wants for me and my family, as well as our church family. And I'm a
Yeah.
firm believer that if we're stepping in line with God's will, then who am I or who is somebody else to get in the way of that?
We're talking about people who tithe, right? And like people who are giving to the church, but you and I are those people too. And
Mm.
I think, man, there's this big downstream effect of when we're faithful, and how that plays into our family life. Can you talk just kind of briefly just about, from all this success? I'm going to call it success. I know you might call it that, you might not, but I'm going to call it success at Odin and the growth that's happening. And
Mm.
now talking about like, gosh, now we got to go back to the table, right? We got to go back to CFR potentially, or we have to have a giving campaign to continue to grow this thing, and make more space for people.
Mm.
How do you feel like your personal life has been affected through that? And then also, how do you also participate in that same campaign that you're asking others to do?
Like I've always had a hard time telling people to do something when I
Mm,
wasn't doing it myself.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
I
good.
yeah, it's been one of those things where I'm like, man, how can I ask somebody else to do something when I'm not,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And so
Yeah,
I,
for
I think
sure.
it's important for me to, in my own personal way, to give, because it's hard for me to ask someone else to give if I'm not doing it myself. It's hard for me to ask someone to be a part of a
Mm,
ministry or serving and so yeah, but also like ministry is a little bit different too as far as the financial side, because there are times
hmm
where, like for instance, like in our small group, when we first started a small group, we were traveling around. We'd go to like different everybody's houses and stuff. And dude, everybody's house was like immaculate and huge
Yeah.
and nice. And here I am, dude, just, I'm just like, and I'm
Yeah.
living a good life. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But yeah, I think sometimes I get caught up in the comparison game,
Mm,
and I'd start asking questions like, God, why am I in ministry? Why do you have me here doing this? And I just think it's really important in our financial thing to realize that God has placed each person in a position where he's called them to XYZ. And as a leader, I think it's really, really important that I
mm,
don't just preach, give, but I
yeah.
lead in that area and show, because that's part of what a leader does
Yeah.
is step out in front. It's kind of like Braveheart with, William Wallace, where he's like, he doesn't just sit back. Like he's like, hey, he's front lines. Let's go. Let's
Yeah.
fight.
Right.
And I think that's really, really important. So yeah.
It's awesome. Well, thanks, man, for jumping in. I'm glad we've had this conversation, and hopefully it's helpful to your audience and to mine. Just
Yeah.
and actually, it's God's audience, right? Like it's God's people that we want to make sure that we're having these, conversations, because if they're not happening somewhere else, then maybe they could happen with us. So, dude, I'm encouraged by you, and I'm excited for Odin and the future of Odin. So, appreciate you jumping on.
Dude, right back at you, man. I'm so proud of you. You're killing it, doing awesome
Thanks,
stuff.
man.
And man, just keep going. Thanks so much for the opportunity. Um,
Yeah, dude.
yeah,
Of course.
it's a blessing to call you family and friend and all that stuff. So
Yeah,
love you,
man.
dude.
And go Hoosiers, right?
Yeah, go Hoosiers. Let's go.
So, all right, man. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for jumping on. See ya.
All right. So, yeah.
Bye.